Dr. Alji Varia. Our today's topic is malabsorption syndromes. So in this topic, we will see definitions of malabsorption syndromes, or you can say brief general introductions about malabsorption syndromes. Then we will see pathophysiology of malabsorption syndromes, which include physiological process for absorption of various nutrient particles or nutrient substances. Then pathology or pathogenesis, which includes various etiological factors and their mechanisms, which ultimately produce various malabsorption syndromes. After that, we will see various laboratory tests to detect malabsorption of a particular substance. Then we will see brief about some common malabsorption syndromes. Coming to definitions, malabsorptions. So here mal means defects and defect in absorptions, that is malabsorptions. So defective absorptions, which represent most commonly as a chronic diarrhea. So commonest symptoms here for malabsorptions is chronic diarrhea and is characterized by defective absorptions of fat and water soluble vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, electrolytes, minerals and waters. So defective absorptions along with common symptoms of chronic diarrhea, that is called malabsorptions. A hallmark of malabsorptions is steatorrhea. Like diarrhea, steatorrhea means a kind of diarrhea in which there is excessive fecal fat. That's why stool becomes bulky, frothy, greasy, yellow or clay colored. Coming to pathophysiology, physiological process for absorption of various nutrients. So main functions of GI tract, gastrointestinal tract is to digest and absorb various nutrients like fat, carbohydrate, proteins, fibers, various micronutrients like vitamins, trace elements, minerals, water and electrolytes. So this is primary functions of GI tract to digest and absorb various nutrients as well as water and electrolytes. There are two kind of process for digestion of a particular substance. One is mechanical process, or you can say physical alterations of a food materials or diets, and second one is enzymatic breakdowns. Mechanical process, there are various mechanisms like swing actions, gastric churning. This churning means a kind of shaking movements. In Gujarati you can say walavu. To and fro mixings of small intestine due to peristalsis, there is to and fro mixings occurs within small intestines. Then there is enzymatic hydrolysis or enzymatic digestion, which is initiated by intraruminal process requiring gastric, pancreatic and biliary secretions. Intraruminal means within rumen of GI tracts, and as we all know, there are various secretions, gastric secretions, pancreatic secretions, biliary secretions, which contains various enzymes. These enzymes causes digestion of diet or food particles. The final product of digestion are absorbed through intestinal epithelial cells, intestinal mucosal cells. Coming to absorptions of carbohydrates, digestions and absorptions of carbohydrates. In diet, carbohydrates are in the form of polysaccharides. Pancreas have two kind of functions. One is exocrine functions and other one is endocrine functions. Exocrine functions are responsible for digestions. Exocrine pancreas secretes various enzymes. Amylase is one enzyme that secreted from exocrine pancreas. This amylase produce breakdown of this complex carbohydrate, that is polysaccharides, into disaccharides. So functions of amylase is degradations of polysaccharides into disaccharides. Examples of disaccharides: lactose, maltose and sucrose. From intestinal mucosal cells, there is secretions of various disaccharide enzymes, like for lactose enzyme is lactase, for maltose enzyme is maltase, and for sucrose enzyme is sucrase. This causes degradations of disaccharides into monosaccharides. Examples of monosaccharides: glucose, galactose, and fructose. This glucose and galactose absorbs into intestinal mucosal epithelial cells by active absorptions. Active absorptions means absorptions that requires energy or that requires ATP. Fructose absorbed by diffusion. Diffusion is a passive process without requirement of energy. So here uh, movement of substance occur across the concentrations gradient. That means movement of substance occurs from higher concentrations into lower concentrations. Facilitated diffusions means diffusions or passive transport which requires transmembrane carrier proteins. That is called facilitated diffusions. So fructose requires transmembrane proteins for diffusions. Main site for absorptions of carbohydrate mainly duodenum and proximal jejunum. So proximal part of small intestines is a primary site for absorptions of carbohydrates. For carbohydrate absorptions, intake pancreatic functions, intake mucosal epithelial cells is required. Coming to digestions and absorptions of fat or lipids, dietary fats are present in the form of triglyceride, cholesterol, cholesterol esters, phospholipid, and free fatty acids. Mechanical actions of peristalsis with the help of bile salts. These bile salts act as a surfactant which reduce surface tension, and mechanical or physical movement within small intestines produce emulsifications. Here emulsifications means breakdown of a large fat globules into tiny droplets. That's why there is increased surface area of these lipid particles, and due to large surface area, various enzymes that secrete from pancreas like lipase, cholesterol esterase, and phospholipase easily act on this increased surface area of emulsified fat droplets. After actions of these various enzymes, like lipase acts on the triglycerides, cholesterol esterase acts on the cholesterol ester, and phospholipase acts on the phospholipid, which ultimately produce free fatty acid, free cholesterol, and monoglycerides. These products binds with bile salts as well as with fat soluble vitamins to forms mixed micelle formations. Mix means here there is many substance, free fatty acid along with fat soluble vitamins, etc. That why it is mixed. Micelle means amphiphilic particles. Amphiphilic means those particles that is hydrophilic as well as lipophilic. That means soluble in water as well as soluble in lipids. That is micelle, amphiphilic. This micelle absorbs into intestinal epithelium cells. Here in intestinal epithelium cells, there is resynthesis of these particles into triglycerides, cholesterol esters. This triglyceride, cholesterol ester as well as phospholipids binds with a protein to form chylomicrons. So chylomicron is a component made up of lipid along with proteins. Here for formations of chylomicron, specific protein is required, that is called apolipoprotein B48. So chylomicrons are complex of apolipoprotein B48 along with this triglyceride, cholesterol esters as well as phospholipids. These chylomicrons enters into rectals. Rectals are lymphatic capillaries present within small intestinal villi, and from rectals these particles goes into systemic circulations. Coming to digestions and absorptions of proteins. Proteins in diet are in the form of polypeptides. Stomach have two types of cells, Schwann cells and parietal cells. Parietal cells produce hydrochloric acids as well as intrinsic factors, and Schwann cells produce pepsids. This HCl, hydrochloric acid, causes proteins to become denatured proteins. Denatured protein means proteins with loss of quaternary, tertiary and secondary structures. So protein have this quaternary, tertiary and secondary structures. If this structure is lost due to actions of any substance, here it is lost due to actions of acid, it is called denatured proteins. Pepsins, enzyme released from sheep cells of stomach causes breakdown of these proteins into large oligopeptides. Exocrine pancreas secretes various proteolytic enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsins, elastase, carboxypeptidase. These various proteolytic enzymes further divide these large oligopeptides into small oligopeptides, free amino acids. From intestinal epithelial cells, secretions of enzymes oligopeptidase, which causes breakdown of small oligopeptides into free amino acids, dipeptides and tripeptides. These are easily absorbed into intestinal epithelial cells, mainly jejunum. So, site for protein absorption is primarily in jejunum. Okay, after physiological process of digestion and absorption of various food particles, coming to pathology of various malabsorption syndromes. So malabsorption reasons whenever there is disturbance into various mechanisms of digestion and absorption. Like intraluminal digestions, in which proteins, carbohydrates and fats are broken down into forms suitable for absorption. If there is defect in intraluminal digestions, there is occurrence of malabsorption. If there is defect in terminal digestions means digestions which involves the hydrolysis of carbohydrate peptides by disaccharides and peptidases respectively in the brush border of intestinal mucosal epithelial cells. That is terminal digestion. So terminal digestion occurs within small intestinal epithelial cells. Intraluminal digestion occurs within lumen of GI tracts. After that, there is transepithelial transports of nutrients, and for repeats, there is lymphatic transports. So if defect in any of these mechanisms, there is occurrence of malabsorption syndromes. Etiology for malabsorption syndromes like digestive failures caused by enzyme deficiency. So various enzymes are required for breakdown of food particles into suitable particles for absorption. If there is deficiency of enzymes, there is malabsorption. Tuxular defects, like if removal of a part of GI tract, like removal of stomach by gastrectomy. So it is called tuxular defect. If there is blind loop formation, fistula formation, these all produce tuxular defects in the GI tracts, which ultimately leads to malabsorption. Various mucosal abnormality. This occurs in various primary malabsorption syndromes, like atrophy of epithelium or atrophy of mucosa. This also produce malabsorption because mucosal cells are primary site for absorption of nutrients. Various infective agents, either bacteria, parasites or other, also produce malabsorption syndromes by various mechanisms, and some systemic disease also affect GI tracts like hyperthyroidism, hypothyroidism, A beta hypoproteinemia, cystic fibrosis, which also produce malabsorption syndromes. Coming to classifications of malabsorption syndromes, if it is due to inadequate digestions, there is etiology for inadequate digestions like post gastrectomy steatorrhea. So steatorrhea after removal of stomach, either partial or total gastrectomy, there is steatorrhea. Then exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. Causes for exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, cystic fibrosis. This cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder. So here there is defect into chloride channels. Transmembrane chloride channels is defective in cystic fibrosis, and that's why here there is occurrence of thick mucus within pancreatic ducts. This thick mucus ultimately blocks pancreatic ducts, leading to pancreatic insufficiency. Chronic pancreatitis destructions as well as fibrosis causing obstructions of pancreatic ducts, leading to pancreatic insufficiency, and carcinoma of pancreas. Then there is reduced bile salt concentrations in intestines. Bile salts are especially required for repeat digestion. So if there is reductions in bile salts within intestines, there is etiology for these bile salt reductions are liver disease, because bile salts are primarily synthesized in liver. So various liver disorders, there is less synthesis of bile salts, that's why deficiency of bile salts occurs. Cholestasis, Various causes of cholestasis, like for example, gallstones. So here there is stasis of bile salts within gallbladders or within rivers, intrahepatic cholestasis. Ultimately, there is also less amount of bile salts into intestines. Bacterial overgrowth. This bacterial overgrowth produce defect into enterohepatic circulations of bile salts. Bile salts primarily produced from rivers. From river they goes into gallbladders, and from gallbladder they comes into intestines. This is normal process. From intestines they act on the food particles, and after that majority of bile salts by enterohepatic circulations further goes into rivers. This is normal physiological process. Up to 90% of bile salts goes into rivers from intestines, that is called enterohepatic circulations. In case of bacterial overgrowth, this bacteria causes deconjugations of bile salts. And due to deconjugations of bile salts, there is reductions into enterohepatic circulations of bile salts. Can interruptions of enterohepatic circulations of bile salts by various mechanisms, like especially those disease or disorders that affects terminal ileum. There is interruptions of enterohepatic circulations. Terminal ileum is a primary site for enterohepatic circulations of bile salts. So various disease like resection of terminal ileum, Crohn's disease, intestinal TB, these all are especially affects terminal ileum. So there is chances of reductions in enterohepatic circulations. After inadequate digestions, coming to inadequate absorptions, like resections of a bowel, as in blind loop syndromes, surgery, fistula, diverticula or strictures and inflammatory bowel disease. So here resections of bowels, there is reductions in surface area of intestinal mucosa. Less amount of surface area, that's why less absorption leading to malabsorptions. Various disease, especially infective disease of intestines by various bacteria and other organisms like enteritis, parasitic infections, giardia and ocoms also produce inadequate absorptions. Impaired transports due to lymphatic obstructions. This is especially important for repeat absorptions and transports. Lymphatic obstructions primarily due to lymphoma. This also occurs due to A beta lipoproteinemia, because this beta lipoproteins is required for transport of lipids from intestinal epithelial cells into circulation. If there is absence of beta lipoproteins, there is transport defects leading to malabsorptions. Then there is various primary mucosal defects called as primary malabsorption syndromes. Examples are celiac disease, tropical screw, Whipple disease, disaccharide deficiency, Crohn's disease, lymphoma, those lymphoma that affects mucosa of intestines, and intestinal tuberculosis. Decreased availability of ingested nutrients and cofactors for absorptions. Like for vitamin B12 absorptions, intrinsic factor is required, but if there is deficiency of intrinsic factors due to either gastrectomy or due to antiparietal cells antibody. Gastrectomy, removal of stomach, so less amount of intrinsic factor secreted, and antiparietal antibodies seen in case of pernicious anemia. This antibody acts on the parietal cells, producing atrophy of parietal cells. Ultimately, there is less amount of intrinsic factor secretions as well as acid secretions, leading to anemia due to vitamin B12 deficiency. Bacterial overgrowth. This bacteria binds with vitamin B12, leading to B12 malabsorptions. And fish tapeworms. These fish tapeworms having receptors for vitamin B12. So fish tapeworms also leading to B12 deficiency. After pathogenesis, coming to clinical features of various malabsorptions. Depending on the substance, there is various sign and symptoms. Right? If there is malabsorptions of calorie, there is weight loss with normal appetites. Malabsorptions of fat leading to pale, voluminous, greasy, offensive diarrhea, called as steatorrhea. malabsorption of protein leading to edema, less proteins in blood leading to reductions in oncotic vessels of blood leading to edema, protein malabsorption leading to muscle atrophy, amenorrhea, carbohydrate malabsorption leading to abdominal bloating, flatus and diarrhea, watery diarrhea, B12 malabsorptions, macrocytic anemia, various neurological signs and symptoms due to subacute combined degenerations of spinal cord, folic acid deficiency or malabsorption leading to macrocytic anemia, B complex vitamin deficiency leading to cheilitis, glossitis, angulostomatitis, iron deficiency, microcytic anemia, calcium and vitamin D malabsorptions leading to muscle spasms, osteomalacia, rickets, tetany, vitamin A malabsorptions leading to follicular hyperkeratosis, night blindness, vitamin K malabsorptions leading to bleeding, diastasis and hematoma. This vitamin K is required for formations of vitamin K dependent coagulation factors. If there is malabsorption of vitamin K, there is less amount of vitamin K dependent coagulation factors leading to bleeding, diastasis. Coming to laboratory diagnosis of various malabsorption syndromes, there are various states which is divided into subcategories like test for malabsorption of fat, for malabsorption of carbohydrates, test for pancreatic dysfunctions, test for malabsorption of vitamin B12, test for bacterial overgrowth, etc. Coming to test for fat malabsorption, like microscopic examinations of fecal fats, quantitative estimations of fecal fat and CO2 breath test. Microscopic examinations of fecal fat. So here we do microscopic examinations of stool specimens after facial stains, right? Oil Ledo stains, or you can use Sudan 3 and Sudan 4 stains. These stains are specific for fats or lipids. If there is more amount of fat within stools, this fat globules stains red in oil Ledo stainings. Here there is absence of fat globules. So simple microscopic examinations to detect whether there is increased fat within stools. Then quantitative examinations of fat, that means how much amount of fat present within stools. Here initially we collect stool of a patient. After that, fat from stools is extracted by using solvents, and after that, by saponifications, we measure total amount of fat within stools. Normally, it is less than 6 gram per day. With diarrhea due to any cause, whether it is due to fat malabsorption or due to other causes, there is increase into fecal fats up to 14 grams per day. With fat malabsorptions, it is increased up to 50 to 100 grams per day. Then CO2 breath test, also called as triolin test. Here radio-labeled triglycerides. This is repeats triglyceride radio-labels, that is called C14 triolins, are administered orally after hydrolysis by pancreatic lipase. As I told you, lipase act on triglyceride. So here hydrolysis of triglyceride occurs due to pancreatic lipase into monoglycerides and free fatty acids. So normal exocrine pancreatic functions is required for conversion of this triglyceride into free fatty acids. After that, this free fatty acids absorbs into circulation, goes into liver and metabolized into hepatic cells. Ultimate product is CO2. Measurement of breath radio-labeled CO2. So peak radioactivity at 5 to 7 hours. So if there is normal pancreatic functions along with normal absorption of this free fatty acid and monoglycerides from intestinal mucosa, there is normal detections of breath CO2 at 5 to 7 hours. If there is defect in either pancreatic functions or in you can say in absorption of repeats, there is less amount of CO2 in breath at 5 to 7 hours. Coming to test for malabsorption of carbohydrates like lactose tolerance test, breath hydrogen test, and D-xylose absorption test. Lactose tolerance test like GTT, glucose tolerance test. Here similar test to GTT, but instead of glucose, here we use lactose. This lactose is made up of glucose and galactose. 50 gram polar lactose is given with water, and after that blood glucose levels is estimated at intervals 0, 30, 60 and 120 minutes. Failure of expected rise of blood glucose and provocations of symptoms are indicative of lactose intolerance. So if there is defects into metabolisms or into digestions of lactose, there is less amount of blood glucose increase. Plus there is various signs and symptoms due to accumulations of lactose. Coming to breath hydrogen test, here polar dose of lactose is given and breath hydrogen is measured. In lactase deficiency, lactose is not absorbed and hence large intestines which contains large amount of lactose where hydrogen is produced by bacterial fermentation. So similar to previous test, that is lactose tolerance test, here also we do polar dose of lactose. Normally this lactose is divided into glucose and galactose by enzyme lactase, but if lactase deficiency, there is no division of lactose into glucose and galactose. That's why this lactose goes into large intestines, and in large intestines by the actions of normal bacteria there is generation of hydrogens. We detect these hydrogens into breath to measure lactose intolerance. D-xylose absorption test. Aim of this test is to assess absorptive capacity of small intestines. D-xylose is a plant sugar completely absorbed in small intestine without their digestion. So here there is no requirement of enzymatic or other digestions because it is simple sugar. After ingestions, it is excreted largely unsafe in urine. If excretion is less than 20% of ingested dose, absorption is considered as impaired. Coming to various tests for pancreatic insufficiency, right? Invasive test or direct test. Name of this invasive test is secretin CCK-PZ test, secretin cholecystokinin pancreozymin test. This secretin is a substance produced from intestinal mucosal cells, especially of duodenums and proximal jejunums. CCK and PZs produced from pancreas itself. Actions of secretin CCK-PZ is increase amount of pancreatic secretions into intestines. So it stimulates exocrine pancreas to secrete more amount of pancreatic juice into intestines. Here we performs intramuscular injections containing this substance, and after that this substance goes into our circulations which causes stimulations of exocrine pancreas, and pancreas secrete more amount of pancreatic juice into intestines. By endoscopic insertions of tube within duodenums and collections of pancreatic secretions from duodenum, we measure total amount of pancreatic secretions along with amount of enzymes present into these secretions to measure functions of exocrine pancreas. This requires endoscopy. That's why it is invasive test. Some non-invasive tests are also there, like NBT, PABA test, pancreatic oil test, breath test, and estimations of fecal fats, as well as estimations of fecal pancreatic enzymes, like estimations of enzymes within stools, lipase, amylase. These all are secreted from pancreas. Various radiographic techniques, plain abdominal X-ray, sometimes detect calcified regions within pancreas. which ultimately suggests chronic pancreatitis. Ultrasonography of abdomens, ERCP, endoscopic retrograde cholecystopancreatography, and CT abdomens to detect structural abnormality of pancreas. Test for malabsorption of vitamin B12. It is called scaling test. Indication of this test to detect vitamin B12 deficiency as well as to differentiate whether it is due to defect in intrinsic factors or it is due to malabsorption syndromes. So, two purpose of this test: certain prerequisite for scaling test like normal working kidney, proper urinary collections, and rule out allergic reactions to radioactive substance, because radioisotopes are utilized in this test. Procedure of this test: radioisotopes used for labeling vitamin B12 is either cobalt 58 or cobalt 57. Here there is two stages of scaling test, stage 1 and stage 2. In stage 1, after overnight fastings, give oral dose of 1 milligram of radioactive labeled vitamin B12. It is called hot B12s. Radio labeled vitamin B12, hot B12s. At the same time, 1 milligram unlabeled B12s, which is called cold B12s, is given by intramuscular routes to saturate serums as well as tissue binding sites. Patient is kept fasting for next 2 hours and then urinary excretions of vitamin B12 is estimated. Interpretations of stage 1 of scaling test. In normal individual, 24-hour urinary excretions is more than 10% of oral dose of what vitamin B12. If it is less than 10%, it suggests either intrinsic factor deficiency or there is malabsorption of vitamin B12. So to differentiate whether it is due to intrinsic factor deficiency or it is due to malabsorption, we perform stage 2 of scaling test. So in stage 2, here test is repeated. Similar test that is performed in stage 1 is repeated along with utilizations of intrinsic factors. So along with what vitamin B12, here we also do injections of intrinsic factors. Interpretation of this test: if 24-hour urinary excretions of what B12 is now become normal, that means after stage 2, if excretions becomes normal more than 10%, patient is suffering from intrinsic factor deficiency rather than from malabsorption syndromes. If there is still less than 10% excretions of what B12, it suggests malabsorption syndromes. By thus, we can differentiate whether B12 deficiency is due to intrinsic factor deficiency or it is due to malabsorption of B12. Test for bacterial overgrowth in small intestines, right? Intestinal absorptions, intestinal aspirations, and cultures, bacterial or other cultures. This is invasive process. It also requires endoscopic examinations and corrections of intestinal materials. Hydrogen bread test. Here increased blood hydrogens after load of recturols suggests bacterial overgrowth. Similar test we perform for lactose insufficiency or lactose intolerance. Here also hydrogen bread test is performed. Then C14 xylose bread test, 1 gram radiolabeled xylose given orally. It is metabolized by bacteria to CO2, radiolabeled CO2 that is absorbed and excreted into breath. So CO2 breath test is also performed to detect bacterial overgrowth in small intestines. After various diagnostic laboratory tests for malabsorptions, coming to specific malabsorption syndromes. Commonest one is celiac disease. This one is common cause for malabsorptions. Celiac disease is also called celiac sprue and gluten sensitive enteropathy. It is an immune mediated enteropathy triggered by ingestions of gluten containing cereals like wheat, rye, barley, in genetically predisposed individual. So here immunological mechanisms. You can say hypersensitivity to gluten. Gluten is a protein which is present in certain grains like wheat, rye and barley. So those individuals which is susceptible for gluten, there is occurrence of gluten sensitivity leading to enteropathy, that is called celiac disease. Etiological factors for celiac disease, various environmental factors, that means there is association of the disease with gliadins. This gliadins is a component of gluten. So gluten is made up of gliadins plus gluteinins. So here gliadins is a responsible factors for celiac through immunological factors. Serum antibodies are generated against anti-gliadins. Genetic factors. This occurs almost exclusively in patients with HLA-DQ2 or HLA-DQ8 LD. So genetically predisposed individual, whenever exposed to glutens, there is generation of anti-gliadin antibodies, and these anti-gliadin antibodies produce various signs and symptoms of celiac disease. Pathogenesis: gluten contains gliadins. This gliadins enters into mucosa of small intestines. Here there is one enzyme called tissue transglutaminase. Tissue transglutaminase. This enzyme poses gliadins into deamidated gliadins. So here convergence of gliadins into deamidated gliadins by these enzymes. This deamidated gliadins acts as a antigens. So these antigens attach with antigen presenting cells. In these antigen presenting cells present these gliadin antigens to T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes become activated, which release various mediators, especially interferon gammas, which produce various mucosal changes, either functional or structural changes into mucosa. Plus T lymphocytes, activated T lymphocytes also release various mediators that causes activations of B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes becomes plasma cells, produce various antibodies like anti-gliadin antibodies, anti-endomysial antibody and anti-TTG, transglutaminase enzymes. So anti-TTG antibodies. Ultimately, here there is loss of villi by various mediators. So mucosal atrophy occurs, either partial or total. Small intestinal mucosal atrophy occurs due to loss of villi. Plus there is increased intraepithelial lymphocytes, more amount of intraepithelial lymphocytes. Increased mitosis within these mucosal epithelial cells. Plus there is crypt hyperplasia, which produce crypt elongations. So these are structural changes within intestinal mucosa in celiac disease. Clinical presentations, signs and symptoms: more common in females than male. Anemia, chronic diarrhea, bloatings, abdominal pains, constipation and chronic fatigue are common signs and symptoms. In silent celiac disease, here there is positive serology plus positive biopsy, that means here villus atrophy is present but without symptoms, that is silence. Both positive serology plus positive biopsy findings but without symptoms. In latent celiac disease, here just positive serology without villus atrophy, without any signs and symptoms. Some other clinical presentations of celiac disease, like itchy, blistering skin lesions, called as dermatitis herpetiformis, means herpes-like skin eruptions. This is seen up to 10% of patients suffered from celiac disease. Growth retardations, short stature, rickets, delayed puberty in children, associated conditions, especially various immunological conditions like type 1 diabetes, autoimmune thyroid disease, IgA nephropathy also occurs in case of celiac disease. Diagnosis: The hallmark of celiac sprue is the presence of abnormal small intestinal biopsy. So, histopathological examinations of small intestinal mucosa is required to diagnose celiac disease. Site for biopsy, second part of duodenum and proximal jejunum. This is important because celiac disease especially presents in the proximal small intestines. That's why site for biopsy is proximal small intestine, second part of duodenum and proximal jejunum. On biopsy, histopathological examinations, here there is more amount of intraepithelial CD8 positive T lymphocytes, that is called intraepithelial lymphocytosis, crypt hyperplasia, villus atrophy, either partial or total villus atrophy. This is basic reasons for malabsorption, villus atrophy leading to malabsorption. In addition, here there is increased rate of epithelial turnovers leading to increased crypt mitotic activity. Other features of fully developed celiac disease include increased number of plasma cells, mast cells, and eosinophils into upper part of lamina propria. This one is normal histological microscopy of small intestines. Normally there is slender finger-like villi. These are slender finger-like villi. Villus to crypt ratio 3 to 5 is to 1. Villus length to crypt depth ratio. These are crypts. Normally it is 3 to 5 is to 1. No increase into intraepithelial lymphocytes. These are normal findings. In celiac disease, there is atrophy of this villi leading to blunt to flat villi along with villus to crypt ratio less than 3 is to 1. Increase intraepithelial lymphocytes, plus there is increased mitotic activity into epithelial cells, crypt hyperplasia. Serological examinations in case of celiac disease. These are non-invasive tests. More sensitive tests are detections of IgA antibody against tissue transglutaminase or detections of IgA or IgG and autoantibody against D-amidated gliadins. These are sensitive tests. Specific test is anti-endomysial antibody. Treatments. Only treatments currently available is gluten-free diets, because here gluten hypersensitivity, that's why gluten-free diets produce relief or resolutions of this celiac disease. Complications of celiac disease. In chronic cases, there may be chances of development of various malignancy like enteropathy associated T-cell lymphoma or sometimes small intestinal adenocarcinoma may occur in chronic celiac disease. After celiac disease, coming to tropical sprue. Tropical sprue is malabsorption syndrome that occurs almost exclusively in people living in or visiting the tropics. That's why it is called tropicals, because it occurs in tropical countries like Caribbean, North and South America, West Africa, India and Southeast Asia. Although no definite causative organisms has been identified, overgrowth of aerobic enteric bacteria has been documented. So exact etiology is unknown for tropical sprue, but basically it is hypothesized that means it is suggested various bacteria or other organisms overgrowth in tropical country is responsible for tropical sprue. So various infections like Cryptospora, this one is parasites, various bacteria like Yersinia enterocolitica and Clostridium difficile may be responsible for tropical sprue. Diagnosis of tropical sprue. Biopsy. Histological changes of tropical sprue are similar to celiac disease. So similar histological findings in biopsy in case of tropical sprue as well as in case of celiac disease, but some difference like total villus atrophy is uncommon in case of tropical sprue. total villus atrophy is uncommon in case of tropical screw. But this total villus atrophy can occur in a severe case of celiac disease. So one differentiating features belong tropical screw and celiac disease is total villus atrophy. Others are in tropical screw, involvement occurs into distal small intestines. In celiac disease, involvement is of proximal small intestine. In tropical screw, involvement is distal small intestines. So here biopsy is usually taken from terminal parts of ileums. And due to involvement of distal small intestines, here there is vitamin B12 deficiency. Plus, due to vitamin B12 deficiency, nuclei of epithelial cells may become enlarged or megaloblastic. So this is also one differentiating features into biopsy. In biopsy, even nuclei of intestinal epithelial cells become larger in size due to vitamin B12 deficiency. Coming to short bowel syndromes, following resections of bowels, diarrhea and or steatorrhea can appear due to decrease in the area of the absorptive surface. That is called short bowel syndrome. Shortness of bowel producing diarrhea and steatorrhea. Bacterial overgrowth syndromes. Here there is proliferation of colonic type bacteria within the small intestines. Colonic type bacteria. This is normally present into colon or large intestine. But if they are proliferate into small intestine, it is called bacterial overgrowth syndromes. Various etiological factors for bacterial overgrowth syndrome: small intestinal diverticula, blind roots, strictures, diabetes mellitus and scleroderma. Effect of bacterial overgrowth into small intestines. This bacteria causes metabolizations of bile salts, resulting in deconjugations of bile salts, and that's why there is reductions of enterohepatic circulations of bile salts, ultimately leads to reductions of bile salts into small intestines and malabsorptions of fat. Other effect of bacterial overgrowth into small intestine is damage of intestinal mucosal villi. This damage may occur due to bacterial invasion itself, or it may occur due to toxins or metabolic products of bacteria invasions. Damaged villi leading to villus atrophy. Coming to Whiplash disease. This Whiplash disease is also called as intestinal lipodystrophy. Intestinal lipodystrophy. Etiology for Whiplash disease: it is caused by bacteria Topherima whipleri. This is bacilli Topherima whipleri, gram-positive bacilli, which is causative for Whiplash disease. Effect of Whiplash disease: it produces diarrhea and steatorrhea, weight loss, ulceralgia, neurological disturbance, hyperpigmentation of skin. That means multiple systems are involved in case of Whiplash disease. Multi-system disease. Diagnosis of Whiplash disease: we can perform identifications of this bacilli by polymerase chain reactions. You can do histopathological examinations of biopsy. In histopathological examinations, we can detect macrophages containing PAS positive granules, periodic acid skip positive granules within macrophages of small intestinal biopsy. If we perform electron microscopy of these biopsy specimens, we can see rod-shaped microorganisms, Whiplash bacilli, rod-shaped organisms in electron microscopy. These macrophages present within small intestinal lamina propria. Routine hematology and eosin stains of a small intestinal mucosa showing abundant number of foamy macrophages into lamina propria. These all are foamy macrophages. Macrophages having bubbly cytoplasms. Foamy macrophages. large number of foamy macrophages, and that's why this disease, Whiplash disease, is also called as lipodystrophy, intestinal lipodystrophy, because these macrophages appears like lipodystrophic cells. On facial stains, periodic acid tube stains, this macrophages shows presence of past positive red stains granules within cytoplasms of macrophages. These all are macrophages containing past positive granules. Coming to some other rare form of malabsorption syndromes like lactase or disaccharide deficiency, two types, congenital or acquired. Various signs and symptoms like diarrhea with watery contents, throaty stools, abdominal distensions. This occurs upon milk ingestions because milk contains lactose. In lactase deficiency, there is production of various signs and symptoms after milk ingestions. Autoimmune enteropathy, X-linked disorders, most often in young children, characterized by severe persistent diarrhea and autoimmune disease. A beta lipoproteinemia, rare autosomal recessive disease characterized by inability to secrete triglyceride-rich lipoproteins. Beta lipoproteins, as I told you, it is of two types, apolipoproteins B48s and apolipoprotein B100s. Here there is deficiency of both these beta lipoproteins. Clinical picture is dominated by failure to thrive, diarrhea and steatorrhea, fat malabsorptions leading to steatorrhea. Here failure to absorb essential fatty acid leads to deficiency of fat soluble vitamins as well as lipid membrane defects that can be recognized by presence of acantholytic red cells or Barth cells in peripheral blood smears. Management of various malabsorption syndromes, replacement of nutrients, electrolytes as well as fluids. Sometimes if malabsorption syndrome is severe, parenteral administrations of various nutrients and fluids is required. Pancreatic enzyme supplementations may be required in pancreatic insufficiency. Dietary modifications in certain conditions like gluten-free diets in case of celiac disease and lactose-free diet in case of lactose intolerance. Antibiotic therapy, especially whenever bacteria or other infective agents are positive factors, like in case of small bowel bacterial overgrowth syndromes, in case of Whiplash disease, we can do antibiotic therapy. Thank you.